Board members, we have the official report for Wednesday, 6 December 2017. Very well. There will be corrections. The official report of Wednesday, 6 December 2017 is hereby adopted as a true record of proceedings. Item number 3, questions. Yes, Honorable Deputy Majority Leader.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the first question signs in the name of the Minister for Energy. Mr. Speaker, respectfully, I want to indulge your good self and the minority that the Minister is currently in a meeting with the President and has sent the Deputy Minister to answer the questions due to the very relevance that he places on the work of Parliament. So I'll ask leave from you, Mr. Speaker, so that the Deputy Minister can answer the question on behalf of the Minister. Thank you.
Yes, Honorable Minority Leader.
Speaker, the Deputy Leader have made an application for the Deputy Minister to stand in the stead of the Minister who is with the President, who is in a meeting with the President. The Speaker, I know the President very well, and I know he's encouraging ministers to show respect to Parliament. And for him to be keeping him in the morning when he's supposed to appear before Parliament, maybe your reason is some other reason. I know, and that your application we would not. Maybe find some other compelling reason, but not hide under a meeting. There is no meeting between the President and the Energy Minister. We will call the President. We will call the President. To find out there is an ongoing meeting. But Mr. Speaker, on a more serious note, ministers must endeavor to appear before Parliament. Mr. Speaker, yourself, you were in that. Okay, let me end it there because my mother said backdoor matters are not brought publicly. What side? Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Well, Majority Leader.
Mr. Speaker, for the record, the Minister is in a meeting. Is in a meeting. And the meeting is at the instance of the President. It is the Economic Management Team meeting that is holding. And that is why the Deputy Minister is Mr. Speaker, you see, I tell my colleague the minority leader, intuitively, his own response is to say no to everything. He says he's not in any meeting with the President. And now he says afterwards that I'm going to call the President to verify. So he begins with a note of rejection, and then he wants an affirmation of that rejection. Having said so, and I think he sat down on the note that there is no objection to the Deputy Minister responding to the question. So we will allow the Deputy Minister to respond. Thank you.
Well, leave is granted. Honorable Deputy Minister for Energy may take the seat. And then I invite the Honorable Member for Daboya Mankarigu, Shaibu Mahama, to ask his question.
I'm most grateful, Right Honorable Speaker, for the opportunity. Right Honorable Speaker, I rise to ask the Minister for Energy the progress of work on the extension of rural electrification to Mankargo and its surrounding communities in the Daboya Mankargo constituency. Thank you.
Yes, Honorable Deputy Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, this contract for the southern works was awarded in December 29th, 2015. The ministry is currently working in 5 communities in the Daboya Mankargo constituency under the SHEP 4. These are Mankargo, Lukula, Yagbon, Buksa, and Mpiasem. Mr. Speaker, the high voltage and low voltage poles have been sent to all the communities involved. These poles have been planted and dressed in all the communities except the high voltage poles planting at Buksa. The stringing of the high voltage network has commenced at Mankargo and Lukula, and the low voltage stringing has also commenced in all the communities except Buksa. Mr. Speaker, the delays associated with the completion of works are due to shortage of some electrical materials. The ministry is in the process of procuring these materials to allow for the completion of works by end of third quarter 2018, Mr. Speaker.
Yes, Honorable Member.
Thank you, Right Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, I note from the answer given by the Honorable Minister that third quarter is expected completion of the project. I'm aware that work stalled since the last quarter of 2016, and between 2016 last quarter to the third quarter of 2018 will be about a year and a half. I note also that there is a period up to the 2018 he's talking about. We know from the minister if this work could be done before the 2018 third quarter deadline is given.
Honorable Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I don't think my honorable friend was listening to the answers very well, because the last sentence actually did say that we are hoping very much to complete the work by the third quarter 2018. And that's exactly what you've said.
He repeated that at the beginning. They're saying that, to his knowledge, it's stalled for nearly 2 years now. So why should he believe you?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I started by giving the date when the works commenced. And I stated for the record that December 29th, 2015, that was when the contracts were awarded. We are now beginning of 2018. We've been in office, and I think I have explained to this House before that due to the elections, the materials unit complex was totally emptied, and it's taking some time for us to embark on the procurement process, which takes some time. We've just started receiving materials, and they are going to the various places as scheduled by the materials units. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Let's go through for intervention, Right Honorable Speaker. My last question is actually an appeal. Will be that paragraph 2, high voltage and low voltage poles have been sent to all the communities. These poles have been planted and dressed in all the communities except high voltage poles planting at Buksa. I know that the materials you're talking about have been segregated, poles and then others. Is it possible that you continue with the pole planting at Buksa while waiting for the rest? Thank you.
Honourable Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, we have gotten some protracted problems at Mount Caribou. The high voltage poles were inadvertently sent, that was meant for Busa, were inadvertently sent to Mount Caribou. Unfortunately, the good people of Mount Caribou have decided to hold on to the high voltage poles, which are not really meant for them. And their argument is that they are the biggest time and that they should benefit first before Busa. So right now, the ministry is in talks with the good people of your constituency at Mount Caribou to release the high voltage poles for us to embark on the pole planting. That's the situation right now.
Will Honourable Member assist the ministry to retrieve the poles so the work can continue? Very well, Honourable Speaker. Very well. Honourable Minister, we are done with question number 263. The next question, question number 274, standing in the name of the member for Central Tongue, Mr. Alexander Roosevelt Hotoje.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I rise to ask the Minister for Energy what plans the ministry has to rehabilitate some lines, poles, and transformers of the ECG in Adidome, which is my district capital, Mafikumasi and its environs, which have been connected to the national grid since 1984. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, following the completion of an electrification project under the National Electrification Scheme, the ministry hands over the project to the respective utility company, in this case, the Electricity Company of Ghana, or the Northern Electricity Department, that's based in the northern part of Ghana, based on the location of the community, for maintenance and operation, as well as future expansion of the network. Our checks with ECG indicates that expansion works within the Adidome area have been captured as part of the ECG's 2018 budget, and works are expected to commence by the second quarter of 2018. Furthermore, approval is expected to be obtained for network expansion of Mafizongo by end of first quarter 2018. For Mafi Kumasi area, we are informed that expansion works shall be captured in ECG's 2019 budget, Mr. Speaker. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, from the answers provided by the Minister, specifically in paragraph 2 and 3, expansion works will be done in the areas mentioned. Can I find out from the Minister as to whether the expansion works include the rehabilitation of the existing grid in the areas mentioned? Thank you, sir.
Yes, Honourable Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, yes, indeed, the expansion work includes the rehabilitation of all other works that may be required.
Yes.
Mr. Speaker, in the last paragraph, the second sentence, he has indicated that Mafikumasi area, they are informed that expansion work will be captured in the ECG's 2019 budget. May I know who is giving this information to him? And two, I would also like to find out, because what is currently happening is that because of the problem with the equipment, there is always power cuts from time to time. And people's electrical gadgets are also getting spoiled every now and then. So I would like to find out from the minister what measures, temporary measures in any case, they will put in place to forestall some of these things before the 2019 budget.
Yes, Honorable Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I would advise my honorable friend to formally write a letter to the ECG and copy the ministry, and then we will then see what can be done. It could well be that just transformers that need to be boosted or something of that sort, and we can sort it out, I'm sure. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Very well. Honorable Deputy Minister, we thank you for attending upon the House to answer the questions. You are discharged. Honorable members, yesterday there were two statements on the challenges with herdsmen. The chief whip doesn't want us to call them Fulani herdsmen, just herdsmen. And I directed that the chairman of the Defense and Interior Committee brief the House of the extent of work they have done on the referral made to them by Mr. Speaker last year. I see that the chairman is here. I'll ask him to tell us what they have done with the assignment given to them to date.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. The Speaker, rightly so, a statement was made on the House floor by a colleague in respect of the nomadic herdsmen activity in the Agogo area. And following that, you directed the committee to follow up and bring a report to the House. The Speaker, the committee duly met with the Minister of Interior and the maker of the statement. However, in our deliberations, it emerged that the matter was beyond just where the statement maker was referring to, but within a wider space of the Ghanaian land space. Furtherance to that, we realized that in our sub-region, our country was not the only country going through this menace. In consultation with leadership, it became eminent that the committee would have to step out of our country and go to countries like La Côte d'Ivoire, who is equally going through a similar problem, neighboring Burkina Faso, who are equally going through the same problems, and then Nigeria, the Federal Republic of Nigeria, who is also going through the same problem. The Speaker, as you are truly and very aware of the proceedings and the workings of the House, when it became relevant that we needed to make those travels, we wrote to the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, the Bureau of Africa, the desk of the Bureau of Africa, to assist us with engagements with sectors of their respective countries, i.e. ministries such as Agric, Land, Environment, and Security ministries, so that we will learn from them best practices as they are going with it. The Speaker, as we speak with you, our memos are ready before the Majority Secretariat, waiting for approval for a team of 8 to visit these 3 countries I've already mentioned, and then we will bring the full complement of our observations and findings from there to add up to the initial work we did with the sector minister and the maker of the statement. The Speaker, this became important because in the 6th Parliament, an ad hoc committee of a nature was set up by this House. Similarly, in the 5th Parliament, an ad hoc committee similar to this was set up in this House. In all the deliberations, the reports which emanated pointed to the fact that we needed to do more than we're doing as a House. That is the reason why our view and our scope has sent us where we are today. The Speaker, this is the point your committee has worked up to.
Honorable leaders, do you want to comment on where we are with the committee's work? Yes,
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Speaker, I just wanted to find out from the chairman whether they have put in requests for resources to enable them complete what they intend to do. Because what he said from where I was sitting and hearing, it looks like they are stuck. That's how I see it. If that's not the impression that is creating, I just want to know what is left for them to be able to complete whatever, and how long does he really think it may take the committee to be able to come back to the House with some sort of report that will be able to guide the whole House. So I will be very happy for this further clarification. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you very much. Honorable Speaker, we scheduled to have done the travel in the last meeting. Unfortunately for us, it coincided with the budget meeting. And as a result of that, in consultation with leadership, we're asked to hold on for this meeting. So, as we speak, leadership have assured us that this meeting, within this meeting, we will bring the report to the House. Furtherance to that, in terms of logistics, because of the expensive nature of the exercise we're embarking upon, we have liaised with the Ministry of Defense to assist us in ferrying us around the sub-region so that it will reduce our cost and at the same time offer us some protection. So that is the process within which we are going. In that, when we searched for information, we realized that it is more serious and critical in Nigeria. But we have found a couple of states that have found their acts well, and we will be going there to, as it may be, learn from their practices. And so this is how far we're going to be. I believe the committee is well poised, and we have impressed upon leadership to truly facilitate and assist us to get this resolved within this meeting. So for timelines, I believe by the end of the meeting, we should be ready with our report.
Very well. I urge the leadership to ensure that the committee is well facilitated to complete their work. Thank you, Chairman. Item number 5, at the commencement of public business. Presentation of papers. Honorable Majority Leader, what is the fate of these 2 outstanding reports? Items number 6 and 7.
Item 5.
Speaker, 5. Item number 5.
Sorry, item number 5. Sorry.
The Speaker, I understand the committee is about finished with their report and they need to go into print. So I want to believe that by the time we adjourn, the reports could be late in the House, and then we'll take it from there.
So shall we stand that down?
In the event, yes, Mr. Speaker.
Very well. Yes, Honorable Leader.
Well, since the majority leader is standing down, maybe we'll pick the further discussions not on the floor, because I believe there are other issues that have to be considered before that could be laid. But since he says this stood down, we will take it off the floor.
Very well. Honorable Majority Leader, what about items number 6 and 7?
Speaker, if you can deal with the order paper addendum first, and then we'll revert to the original order paper.
Yes, Honorable Manuel.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I just want to be sure from the table office whether we have sufficient copies. Because, Mr. Speaker, it's always difficult to raise this because of the way the business of the House is arranged. And you can only sometimes try to sneak in around this time when other papers are going to be laid. Mr. Speaker, on 22nd December 2017, we laid the legal profession regulation 2017. Mr. Speaker, as we speak, we don't have copies in the House. More than 1 month after it's been laid. And Mr. Speaker, the information you've been reaching me is that even that regulation has not been gazetted. It's been too many times, and I think that not only this time, it's been happening and happening and happening all these years. I think for once, let Parliament be up and doing so that we avoid this, because sometimes it's very unpalatable when you have to get up and be stating this. Nobody in this House, apart from some few members of the committee that had some copies because they had to do some earlier discussions on them, has this paper. Meanwhile, the days are counting. Because when you look at the Constitution, 11.7, Mr. Speaker, it talks about it coming into force at the expiration of 21 sitting days. And now, if you count the days, the day it was laid, 22nd, even if you take that out, today, by my count, we have about 11 days gone already, leaving us with about 10 days. Yet, this has not even been gazetted. Nobody has copies, and yet the days are counting. I want to plead with the majority leader that for once, this particular one, let's withdraw it to tell the executive that we are tired of this complaint every time and now when they bring the thing and they will not follow up to complete the process. And yet, they expect Parliament to be able to finish the work. For once, this one should be withdrawn so that at least they will know that we are tired in 2018
which one are you addressing? Which one are you suggesting that it be withdrawn?
Mr. Speaker, that was the legal profession regulation, the one that was laid on 22nd
I
December
thought we were dealing with the other paper addendum, so that if you have an issue...
because, Mr. Speaker, like with the greatest of I was saying that because our rules doesn't really give time where these things can be raised, you are able to bring them up when papers are going to be laid. Because I asked the question whether we have sufficient copies before it is being laid.
I thought you would wait for that question to be answered before you link that to something else. So the addendum is on ECOWAS, import levy, and so on. Do members have copies? That's the question. Honorable Majority Leader, yes.
Speaker, respectfully, it is when the clerks at table have sufficient copies for distribution that the paper is laid in the House. It is only after it has been laid in the House that members are issued copies. The issuance of copies to members does not precede the laying of the document in the House. That is the procedure. So if you have the assurance from the class at table that they have sufficient copies, the Speaker, then it could be late. But for the avoidance of doubt, this document has been with us since the beginning of the week. I insisted to cross-check with the chairman of the Finance Committee. And because they were engaged in the drafting of this report from the special committee, it was this morning that I met him, and that paved the way for them to do the addendum. Mr. Speaker, so I am inclined to believe that they have sufficient copies with them. But having said so, Mr. Speaker, I applied for us to consider the other paper addendum. And my colleague, the minority leader, was talking about something completely different from the application that I made. Indeed, it had no relevance to the application that I have made. Mr. Speaker, yes, you may have a very good case. We need to address some of these things. But you can't hijack this application and introduce a new matter.
Yes, Honourable Member for Daku.
Yeah, Mr. Speaker, I'm not about to arrest this, the laying of this paper, but Mr. Speaker, this paper refers to a tax waiver for, I think it's a Tema-Akosombo Railway project. Mr. Speaker, I thought as a policy, the Finance Minister told us in this House that henceforth, everybody undertaking projects like this will be made to pay the taxes and then apply for refund.
Hello? Yeah, first, we must lay the paper. And it will be referred to the committee. You can say everything when the committee brings the report.
Okay.
But now I just I have to grant the leave for the paper to be late before we deal with it. So kindly wait a while. Tarry, gather your ammunition. So when the time is due, you can fire.
Okay. Mr. Speaker, when it's late, this is about railway development. Mr. Speaker, I may not get opportunity for you to...
Don't worry, why is it late?
Okay, you're late.
Yes,
again, on relevance. Yes. For now, at least, there's nothing before the House. So what are you commenting on? What are you commenting on? Okay, Mr. Speaker, I think people should learn procedure in this House.
It's premature.
Very well, Honourable Majority Leader. No.
There's nothing before us, and you are commenting on nothing. You're commenting on nothing. One of the paper has not even been late. Mr. Speaker, our colleague should learn to apply himself to the rules.
Leave is granted for the paper to be late.
Request for waiver of import duties, import VAT, ECOWAS levy, EXIM levy, special import levy, and other approved imposts as assessed amounting to the Ghana cedi equivalent of 48,103,213 United States dollars and 70 cents, equivalent to 211,456,917 Ghana cedis, 11 pesos, on equipment and materials to be procured by Ministry of Railway Development, AFCONS, Infrastructure Limited of India, in respect of the A, design and construction of the 84.8-kilometer multimodal railway line, including railway stations between Tema and Akosombo, and B, the design and construction of railway heads at Tema and Akosombo on an engineering, procurement and construction EPC basis by AFCONS Infrastructure Limited, India.
Honourable members, the paper is still late and is referred to the Finance and Roads and Transport Committee for consideration and report. Yes, Honourable.
Mr. Speaker, I'll be very grateful if we are able to deal with the, since we are laying of papers. Mr. Speaker, since we are laying of papers,
well, let me correct myself. I think this is only the tax waiver. Yeah, so it's referred to the Finance Committee only. Right. Honourable Chief Whip was on his feet. Please, Minority Chief Whip.
Mr. Speaker, with a greater respect, the waiver, I think you did the right thing, because there are items that are normally itemized that are going to, be waived. It is important that the committee that has looked at the commercial agreement to also see what they are itemizing for waivers. Even if it is the leadership of the Roads and Transport Committee going to the Finance Committee to observe, I think it would be useful to us, rather than the Finance Committee alone considering it, whilst the committee there considered the commercial agreement, not having any idea which items. It may not necessarily be the whole committee, but even if it is the leadership of the Committee on Rules, I think, Mr. Speaker, what you did earlier will do us better than only Finance Committee. So I don't know if you could really reconsider the referral.
Honourable Majority Leader, I earlier referred the request to the Finance Committee and the Roads and Transport Committee, but when my attention was drawn to the fact that this is only a tax waiver, I varied my order to say that it is go to further. Honourable Member for New Javing. Now the Minority Chief Whip is suggesting that we should allow the Roads and Transport Committee to join them. I want to hear you, Honourable Majority Leader.
Mr. Speaker, the remit of the Finance Committee is defined by our orders. And the remit of our committees are also defined appropriately by our standing orders. Matters dealing with finance are referred to the Finance Committee, including tax waivers and so on. But we wanted to have a structure where maybe committees, relevant sector committees that might have considered some commercial agreements when it comes to these tax exemptions could link up with the Finance Committee to provide relevant information to allow the work to go on smoothly. Even though we've spoken about this over the years, we also don't apply it. That is where we are. But I think if we find it convenient to introduce it, we may not necessarily conjoin the two committees, but maybe the leadership of the committee, maybe the chairman, the vice, the ranking member, and the vice. Going forward, if we agree to do it that way, that would be the way to determine it. But we cannot have a staccato approach where we want to apply it today and tomorrow it's not done. We have canvassed this position for a very long time. And yet, over the past 8 years, even though I've been the Lone Ranger, it has not been done. You have never been with me. Don't associate yourself. Don't associate yourself with this. Don't associate with this yourself with this. But Mr. Speaker, going forward, if we so want it, so that maybe appropriate information may be transmitted to the Finance Committee, I guess the entire House will have to make that determination.
Yes, Honourable Member for New Javing.
Mr. Speaker,
South.
Mr. Speaker, this is not the first time we are considering tax waivers in this House. Never has a tax waiver been referred to the Finance Committee and another committee. Never. So we'll be setting a bad precedent if we go on this tangent. Because when agreements come, the financing agreement would go to the Finance Committee. Then the commercial agreement, Mr. Speaker, I know you're a member of the Roads and Transport Committee. The commercial agreement in this case went to the Roads and Transport Committee. Now, in the commercial agreement was a requirement that taxes be waived. Now we are at that stage where we are considering the tax waiver. We can't go full circle around again that, okay, when the tax waiver comes through, we have to go to this committee. Because, Mr. Speaker, then every time there's a waiver like this before the committee, they would have to bring the relevant. And what we are considering is a tax waiver. Now, in considering the tax waiver, what expertise is coming from that other committee that is going to enrich the work? He has been here forever. You have been here forever. Forever. You've been here forever. Tell me one instance where a tax waiver was referred to a joint committee.
It's all right. I've heard the leaders. We know what they were done in the past, and we know how insufficient we have found that to be. And so we desire a new approach. I direct that the leadership of the Committee on Roads and Transport join the Committee on Finance in considering this tax waiver. Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I'll be grateful to come back since we are laying on papers about the paper that was laid on the legal profession, into bracket, professional and post-call law course, regulation 2017. Mr. Speaker, this was laid on 22nd December 2017. Over 1 month since it was laid, we do not have sufficient copies in the House.
There are no copies.
Mr. Speaker, like I said, my information is that it's even not been gazetted. Yeah. And I'm happy the chairman of the subsidiary legislation is here. If you could tell us whether it's even certain it's been gazetted. And Mr. Speaker, if you look at the constitutional provisions, these are gross violations of the Constitution and our standing orders. And we cannot continue to allow this thing to fester. Mr. Speaker, I must admit, it's been happening almost all the time, where papers are laid and sometimes weeks, then copies are not in the House. But I think 2018 should be a new leaf where we all agree enough of the wrongdoings, so that we make sure that the right things are done, because it can be very irritating. Already this bill, Mr. Speaker, remember, there has been a petition to this House that has been referred to the Constitution and Legal Committee, which 2 days ago I was seeking if the subsidiary legislation could be merged to it so that they will look at the petition. There is a lot of interest in it, yet we don't even have the regulation in the House, yet we are supposed to consider it. And 11 sitting days had gone already. Mr. Speaker, I think that in fairness to ourselves and to be able to do very diligent work, we should withdraw this so that when the right things are done, sufficient copies are here, we can move ahead to look at it. I mean, why should we allow ourselves to be taken over by time? Because once it's 21 sitting days, whether it's considered or not, with all the petition that has come, they become useless, because you will not even get the opportunity to effect whether you will not get the opportunity to see whether there's a possibility of the protest or the petition that is before the House having some impact on the regulation, because you don't have it to consider. So, Mr. Speaker, I'll be happy if Majority Leader will encourage the Attorney General to come and withdraw this so that the right things are done. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker.
Yes, Chairman of the Federal Legislation Committee.
Yeah, thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, indeed, it is the case that because of the problems associated with the processes for dealing with subsidiary legislation, we have developed this practice of pre-laying, during which we review the proposal, and once we okay it, it is laid. And very often after it's been laid, there isn't anything that we do about it apart from allowing it to run through the 21 days and come into force. So this LI was brought to us, and we met severally. We invited the different stakeholders, the General Legal Counsel, the students, the former directors of law schools, and etc. And we deliberated. We pointed out, we received the same petitions from the students' unions, and we pointed out key areas that we thought should be deleted from the original proposals. And after some negotiation, the General Legal Counsel agreed to delete those ones, review some clauses to meet the position that the committee took. And subsequently, I received a letter from the Attorney General's Department forwarding the reviewed version. And in the reviewed version, we noticed that some of the things that we said they should delete had been deleted. Some of the changes that we proposed had been made, and certain reconstructions inserted to meet the recommendations that the committee made. Somehow, the last sitting on the 22nd, I had stepped outside the chamber, and then in my absence, the regulations were late. In fact, I didn't even know that it had been late, because the students got in touch with me with their petition, and I asked them to exercise patience, because the regulations are not formally before Parliament yet. And if it is formally before Parliament and we present to them what has been brought, and they still have issues, then we can see what can be done. And they insisted that it had been late. Then I got in touch with the clerk of the committee about 2 days ago and asked him, you know, is it true that it has been late? He said, oh, when I stepped outside the chamber and, you know, it was late and etc. I said, okay, can I have the copies? Because this is a very serious matter. The LI has been the subject of public discussions, and I'm sure members of Parliament would want to. And then he there revealed to me that copies were not yet available. So I said, no, if you don't make copies available and members get it so that when constituents are putting pressure, they know what to say, there will be a problem. And so yesterday, I asked him to get in touch with the General Legal Counsel and make sure that they brought the copies and distributed. Like Leader has pointed out, of course, you have to lay before you distribute the copies. So yesterday, he got back to me and said that there's an additional problem, which is that it has been found out that it hasn't been gazetted. So I then recommended to him to get in touch with the leader to advise the Attorney General and Minister for Justice to come and withdraw the LI, because by our procedures, the minister who laid it is the person who should be withdrawing it. So that was my directive to the clerk of the committee yesterday. And whilst it has been withdrawn, we can then have additional time to engage the students, and also the Attorney General's office can benefit from the engagement that we have had, additional engagements that we have had with the students. So, Mr. Speaker, those are the files. I was trying to manage it behind the scenes, but since it has been raised, I'm compelled to provide the details. But whilst on my feet, Mr. Speaker, the same applies to another regulation which was also laid on the Saturday that we had the emergency sitting to swear in the Speaker of Parliament, and that has to do with the National Identification Authority amendment that they brought, the bill that they brought, and the regulations that were to be made pursuant to that amendment. That was also laid on Saturday, and as we speak, we still don't have copies. And when it comes to these LIs, Mr. Speaker, let me also admit that that also we had considered at our pre-laying meeting and generally okayed it. But, you know, usually it is the committee members that get to sit at the pre-laying meeting. Other members don't get to sit at the pre-laying meeting. And there are some sensitive LIs, when they come, members want to contribute. They have an opinion. And colleagues have been asking me, you have allowed this to be laid, where is the copy? We need a copy. So I want to urge the clerk at table and the team there that as much as we do a lot of work doing pre-laying, it is also proper that when it is laid, sufficient copies should be available so that members can have the benefit. Those who are not members of the committee, who haven't seen the original and who don't know how much work has been done, will see it, and then if they have an input. And it is particularly critical for LIs. You can do that for any other document that you are laying, but when it's LIs, the days start counting on the day that you lay it. And so, we cannot apply the same practice when it comes to airlines. So, Mr. Speaker, thank you for the opportunity. Those are the issues that I can respond to.
Honourable Majority Leader, requesting that those airlines, you advise the Attorney General to withdraw them. Yes, I want to hear you. I call the Majority Leader, not the member for Wa West.
Mr. Speaker, I have listened to the issues raised by the whistleblower. And it's interesting, it's interesting to note that the person who said he was managing the issues backstage ends up as the person who is making full disclosures about what management he was engaged in. And the Speaker is constrained to. Mr. Speaker, I think the position of the Constitution is very clear that for orders, rules, or regulations made by a person or authority under a power conferred by this Constitution or any other law, first, it shall be laid in Parliament and be published in the Gazette on the day it is laid before Parliament. Now, we are being told, and I have no cause to disbelieve what the Honourable Ayariga, the chairman of the committee, is saying. And, Mr. Speaker, I'm not going to call for an inquiry into this matter. Mr. Speaker, if indeed it is true that since December 22nd, that particular airline has not been gazetted, that in itself will create a problem. It's not an ordinary bill. And it will be difficult to even situate it where it ought to be on December 22nd, which is supposed to be the Gazette notification date. So that in itself may create a problem. Mr. Speaker, in that regard, let me assure that I'll get in touch with the Attorney General and then we'll see the way forward. I'm happy the Chief Whip for the minority is admitting that these things have happened in the past and they were not right. Some voices were raised at the time, even though at the time I didn't hear his voice. Mr. Speaker, better late than never. I'm told by Kujetu Abdakwa that he never caught the Speaker's eye at the time for 8 solid years. But, Mr. Speaker, I think there are relevant matters that they have brought up. I will liaise with the Minister and as early as possible, I'll get back to the House. I will know what it is that we must do in respect of the one that was supposedly laid on December 22nd, 2017. As for the other one that was laid on Saturday, I conferred with the Minister for Monitoring and Evaluation, who is the sector minister in charge, and he assured that it had gone into print, it was going to be gazetted that same day, and with that assurance, we laid it. In fact, it had been with me for about 3 days before the Saturday when it came to be laid in the House. So, Mr. Speaker, again, on this, and happily that one has traveled just about 2-3 days. We'll look at it, and if it's not been brought to the House, we see to bring it. I'm happy that the chairman of the Subsidiary Legislation Committee is indicating to us that as far as that one is concerned, the committee has had some backstage consultations and they have no problem with the content of the airline. So we'll make sure that members have copies as soon as practical. Mr. Speaker, thank you.
Very well. The leadership will work with the clerks at table to ensure that the appropriate things are done. Honorable Majority Leader, shall we take item number 8?
Speaker, 8 is ready, and we can take item listed as 8.
Very well. Item number 8, motion. Chairman of the Committee of Agri.
Thank you, Right Honorable Speaker. Motion that this House adopt a report of the Committee on Food, Agriculture and Cocoa Affairs.
Mr. Speaker, the one before me is motion listed as item number 10. 8 is also ready. Okay. I don't have 8 before me. Mr. Speaker, so we can take both 8 and 10. Right. Okay.
Yes, Chairman, proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Motion number 8, that this Honorable House adopts the report of the Committee on Food, Agriculture and Cocoa Affairs on the regulations C/REG 22/11/10 establishing community procedures for management of veterinary drugs or biologics. Mr. Speaker, I also like to present your committee's report. Mr. Speaker, I like to tackle the issue of the background, the justification, and the conclusion. And I invite the Hansard Department to cover the entire report as having been read. Mr. Speaker, the Diseases of Animal Act, Act 8.3, provides for the prevention and control of spread of infectious and contagious diseases among animals in Ghana. It does not, however, cover veterinary drugs and biologics. It has therefore created a gap in addressing issues regarding management of veterinary drugs and biologics. There are also disparities in veterinary laws implemented by countries in the West Africa sub-region. Having recognized the fundamental importance of inputs that help in the management of veterinary drugs and contribute to agriculture, heads of states and governments of ECOWAS states in 2008 approved a number of regional agricultural directives and regulations designed to facilitate the implementation of ECOWAS agricultural policy, which were adopted in Accra, Ghana in 2005. The general objectives of the regulations are to harmonize existing national regulations for enhanced agricultural production and productivity. They are also to promote regional trade in agricultural inputs and commodities, as well as regional integration, of which agriculture is an important component. Mr. Speaker, I would like to move to justification. ECOWAS, having realized the risks to human and animal health due to the absence of harmonious laws in the region for the operation of laboratories specifically assigned to the task of quality control, agreed to organize a network to harmonize operations of laboratories. The harmonious laws, if implemented, will maximize the effectiveness of laboratories and minimize the risks to animal and human health in the ECOWAS region. At the 65th ordinary session of the Council of Agricultural Ministers of ECOWAS member states, held in Abuja, Nigeria, on the 23rd February 2010, it was agreed that ECOWAS member states will operate regulations on harmonization of network of laboratories, on rules governing quality control, certification, and marketing of veterinary drugs and biologics in ECOWAS sub-region. The regulation shall enter into force upon its publication by each member state in its national gazette as indicated in Article 64 of the regulations. Many countries are now drafting new laws or revising existing legislations to align them with the regulation C/REG/22/11/10 establishing community procedures for management of veterinary drugs and biologics. Mr. Speaker, I move to observation and recommendations. It was realized that the Public Health Act 2012 currently provides the Food and Drugs Authority power to vet veterinary drugs, although the authority has no laboratories or personnel to investigate veterinary drugs and biologics. When approval is given to regulations, the Veterinary Services Directorate of the Ministry of Food and Agriculture that has the laboratories and personnel to vet veterinary drugs and biologics will take over the function. The committee recommends that all the laws related to veterinary operations should be synchronized to ensure that the Veterinary Services Directorate play its roles as expected. It was again observed that Veterinary Services Directorate as well-equipped laboratories in Kumasi, Oforidua, Techimai, Takrady, and Accra that are specially used for the production of vaccines because the Directorate is not adequately funded to do so. This has resulted in the outbreak of various animal diseases in the country. The committee recommends that the Veterinary Services Directorate should be adequately funded after the adoption of this regulation to ensure that its operation satisfies the requirements of the regulation. The Veterinary Services Directorate is also understaffed. The committee was informed that the request for the employment of 579 veterinary officers was made 6 years ago, but to date, approval has not been granted. With approval of the regulations, there will be the need to have veterinary officers in all the districts. The committee recommends that approval should be given by the Ministry of Finance for the engagement of veterinary officers to make the implementation of the regulations effective. Conclusion. The approval of Regulation C/REG 22/11/10 establishing community procedure for management of veterinary drugs or biologics to ensure that all laws relating to regulations for laboratories and biologics in the sub-region are harmonized to guarantee the safety of veterinary drugs and biologics. The committee therefore recommends the adoption and ratification of the Regulation C/REG 22/11/10 establishing community procedures for management of drugs for biologics. Mr. Speaker, respectfully submitted.
American.
Yeah, the Honorable Ranking Member.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, for the opportunity to second the motion moved by the Honorable Chairman of the committee. Mr. Speaker, in doing so, I would like to draw your attention to page 5 of the report. It is stated that the regulation shall enter into force upon its publication by each member state in the National Gazette, as indicated in Article 64 of the regulation. Mr. Speaker, under the regulation, the power to vet veterinary drugs is given to the Veterinary Services Directorate. But we are all aware that under the Public Health Act of 2012, this function is given to Foods and Drugs Authority. So it means that before we can implement the regulation, there is a need for this House to amend that act to give that function to the Veterinary Services Directorate, because they have the technical know-how, and as the report rightly says, they have the laboratories to perform that function effectively. Mr. Speaker, on page 6, paragraph C, we are told that the Veterinary Services Directorate is also understaffed, and the committee was informed that they made a request for recruitment of 579 veterinary officers. But because the function to vet veterinary drugs was then in the hands of the Food and Drugs Authority, they were not given the authority the mandate to recruit. Today, after the adoption of this report, the power to vet veterinary drugs will be with the Veterinary Services Directorate, and they will need a lot of officers across the country to be able to perform that function effectively. And therefore, we urge the Honorable Minister of Finance to give them the approval to enable them recruit as many as 579 officers so that they can vet the veterinary drugs across the country. On this note, Mr. Speaker, I second the motion.
Members, the motion has been moved and seconded for the consideration of the House. Very well. I'll put a question. Yes, Honorable Chief.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I rise to speak to the motion before us and to say that as member state in the West African sub-region, it is important that we rectify this. But, Mr. Speaker, I have some concerns as to whether by ratification it mandatorily means, because every country, every member country has a way of internally regulating inflows or manufacturing of food and drugs. And these veterinary drugs and biologics fall under our law, under the Food and Drugs Authority. This paragraph 9, that talks about we amending the Public Health Act 2012 because the Veterinary Service Directorate of the Ministry of Food and Agriculture has the laboratory and personnel that will be able to deal with this. I strongly disagree with them, because the laboratory that we have at the Food and Drugs Authority, Mr. Speaker, is one of the best that we have in Africa. And the state invested heavily to be able to have such a laboratory. I don't see anything wrong in collaboration. I don't know what is going to happen is that when we amend the law, after we have established a laboratory that's able to do all this, we will not have to now create another laboratory for the Veterinary Services Division. But I strongly believe that they can work together for us to be able to achieve the same result without necessarily taking the whole mandate to the Veterinary Services Division. Mr. Speaker, I'm saying this because before the establishment of the Food and Drugs Authority in the early 90s, we used to have only the standard board as the authority that verifies and checks anything coming into our country. When we established the Food and Drugs Authority, up to date, there's still a tussle between the two organizations as to their area of operation. To the extent that last 2 years, in 2016, the Standard Authority under the Ministry of Trade wanted to bring a law to amend indirectly some sections of the Food and Drugs Authority Act. So if we are not careful and we do not harmonize what we really want to do, we'll be creating silos and wasting state resources, because they will all then invest, because before you'll be able to check the drugs and the biologics, you need to have a well-equipped laboratory. And the one that we have at the Food and Drugs Authority is even certified by the WHO, to the extent that they even bring some of the other lab work across Africa into that laboratory. I think that what we need to do is to see how we can harmonize their work, but not to be creating silos and creating operational difficulties when they go out. So now when you go to the port, Mr. Speaker, the interesting thing is that the standard authority will have to certify, the food and gas authority will have to also certify your goods before you can go through the customs. And it's creating bottlenecks for our business people who are importing and are into this operation. I think that rectification, yes, it's important, but as to whether we have to see off the laboratory tests and other things, I think that the protocol will give room for every country to internally be able to manage the operations of or the implementation of the protocol. And I think that when we get to that, let's look at how we can harmonize the operation and not to create another silos and create another difficulties for not only our business people, but for even state agencies as to which is the boundary of one from the other. Because in many, many instances, Mr. Speaker, whereas some medication could work on humans, they could equally work on animals. So in trying to separate it and create a laboratory, let's be careful, because I strongly believe that the Food and Drugs Authority, the laboratory that they have, the law that we have, we can find a way of synchronizing them and making them to work together instead of creating another silos. With this comment, Mr. Speaker, I support the ratification of this protocol. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker.
The majority leadership want to comment.
Speaker, thank you for the opportunity. Mr. Speaker, just a few observations. First, we are told that this regulation, once Parliament ratifies it, must subsequently be gazetted before it comes into force. Just this morning, we were talking about a backlog of instruments and regulations that have not been gazetted yet. So to sound a note of caution, that once we ratify it, there should be that automaticity in having the regulation gazetted. Speaker, it doesn't necessarily mean that we have to abide with every provision of the regulation, because as the committee has informed us, many countries are now drafting their new laws. The point is that they must synchronize with the regulation that is before us. Mr. Speaker, but the chief whip for the minority is talking about his own feelings. The committee has reported a matter of fact to us. And on page 6, there's a clear information to us. The Speaker, 9.0A provides, and I read, it was realized that the Public Health Act 2012 currently provides the Food and Drugs Authority power to vet veterinary, and I guess, Mr. Speaker, the vet is VET and not VERT, to vet veterinary drugs, although the authority has no laboratories or personnel to investigate veterinary drugs and biologics. Mr. Speaker, the truth of the matter is that what laboratory they have there deals with human beings and not animals and birds. So we're not talking, the chief whip should not be talking about gut feelings. It's about a statement of fact. And you cannot contradict that. Mr. Speaker, that indeed is the position. You cannot be talking from your gut feelings and say that you deeply believe that. It's not your belief that we are talking about. Mr. Speaker, it's not a matter of faith. It's a matter of providing factual basis for the ratification of this and urging. You have contrary information to what I've stated?
Honorable Honorable Leader, do you want to cede? Otherwise, I haven't.
Mr. Speaker, I am not inclined really to yield because he's had his turn. And I'm pointing out to him, you cannot be talking at cross purposes and indeed be, shouting over the aisle.
Even on your feet, sit.
Can you resume your seat so that I continue?
Mr. Speaker, go on. When
Mr. Speaker,
I recognize him, he knows I always recognize him. So I'll let
Speaker, there's a statement of fact by the Committee on Agric, and that is what we have read here, that much as the Food and Drugs Board, Food and Drugs Authority's laboratory is very well equipped, and I must agree with the Chief Whip that occasionally some countries in the sub-region have sent samples for test and certification by the authority. But it doesn't mean that they deal with animals. They don't. And that's a statement of fact. So, Mr. Speaker, that is why they are urging that we may have to amend the Act.
Honorable Chief Whip, do you have a point of order?
Right, Mr. Speaker. First, I want the majority leader to withdraw the statement saying that I'm speaking from a gut feeling. He should remember that I was once the chairman of the health committee.
Sorry, what was the word?
He was saying that I was speaking from my personal gut feeling. I'm not speaking from my personal gut feeling. Mr. Speaker, if you check the records of this House, I tailored the Public Health Act in 2012. And I know what I'm talking, and I've been the member of the Health Committee from 2005 to date. When we are talking about drugs, it has nothing to do with a laboratory to examine animals. And if you look at what they stated in 9, Mr. Speaker, it's talking about veterinary drugs and biologics. They're not talking about the animal laboratory. They're talking about the drugs. And I'm saying that the Food and Drugs Authority, this statement that they have there is inaccurate, and this House can cross-check. They have what it takes to examine every drug, whether it is for vet, whether it is for animal, whether it is food for animal, whether it is food. But if we are talking about veterinary lab that examines animals, that's different. But we're talking about the drugs and the biologics, and I'm saying that this statement that the committee has put in here is inaccurate, because the Food and Drugs Authority, and this House has what it takes to cross-check this. The Food and Drugs Authority has their laboratory, can do that. That's what I'm saying there. Let's find a way of harmonizing what they do. So I'm not speaking from a personal gut feeling. I'm speaking from fact too, because we can call for the act now, and you can look at it. We can send a committee to go to the laboratory at Food and Drugs Authority to check. I'm speaking from facts. It's not a gut feeling. It's not a personal feeling. I know it as a fact because I've served as chairman of the Health Committee. I'm a member of the Health Committee, and I've interacted with Food and Drugs Authority severally. We've visited the laboratory. We know what that laboratory is capable of doing. And I'm only sounding a caution that we don't create the kind of problem that we created between the Food and Drugs Authority and then the Standard Authority currently with another, because we can equip the veterinary division to deal with animals, the examination of animals and other things. But when it comes to the drugs, we can still leave it with Food and Drugs Authority because they have what it takes to be able to deal with it. This statement I said is inaccurate. I'm not speaking from a personal feeling or personal gut. That's just what I wanted the majority to know. Thank you very much.
Very well. So the opportunity to respond. So I'm not ruling on whether he's out of order or not, now that you're satisfied.
No, Mr. Speaker, the record has it that I was speaking from personal gut. And I'm correcting him that I'm not speaking from my personal feeling and gut. I'm also speaking with facts because I have information that is also in this House. So I think that it's important that he relates to that. I'm not speaking, maybe he didn't know I was speaking from fact. I'm not drawing his attention. I'm not speaking from my personal feeling or my personal gut, as he alluded.
Yes, Honorable Majority Leader.
Mr. Speaker, I just walked on the very way the Chief walked. He, on many occasions, during his own submission, and I'm quoting him, I strongly believe, Mr. Speaker, he repeated this on about 4 occasions. And then he said, my strong feeling on 1 occasion. Mr. Speaker, and that is what I alluded to. So I'm just following you on the very words that you used. Mr. Speaker, so he is the person who made that submission. And on the wings of his own contribution, I'm saying that in that case is a feeling that is expressed. The Speaker, now he's introducing another dimension, that the content of the report is inaccurate. Mr. Speaker, the Honorable Awikopoku is a very good friend of the Chief Whip. He's a ranking member on agriculture. and Mr. Speaker, Mr. Speaker, let him rise up. Because I saw when the Chief Whip was even talking. He was shaking his head profusely about the inaccuracy of the Chief Whip's submission. Mr. Speaker, Mr. Speaker, they are there. But these are serious matters. We cannot have Parliament, disagreeing with a statement of fact by the committee. Mr. Speaker, that should be a legitimate concern. The Chief Whip has moved from the realm of feelings, and now he's saying that he's talking to facts that he knows. Mr. Speaker, if that is the case, because the establishment of the laboratory is different from what business that they conduct. Establishment of the laboratory is different from what business that they conduct. The committee is telling us that the laboratory is not conducting that business, regardless of the high-profile nature of the equipment. The Speaker, so let us really interrogate the issue, whether indeed, because I'm talking to the facts as provided by the Committee on Agriculture, that FDA doesn't have the laboratory or even personnel to investigate veterinary drugs and biologics. Mr. Speaker, they have spoken about 2 things. One, the insufficiency of the laboratory to deal with it, and 2, the lack of personnel to deal with it. These are 2 major issues that they have brought. And the Honorable Chief Whip, a former chairman of the Health Committee, is contradicting them. As I said, he's moved from the realm of feelings now to a statement of fact, that what he's saying is a statement of fact. If it is true, Mr. Speaker, then we need to cause further investigation with this. If already the laboratory is equipped sufficiently and appropriately, then we cannot duplicate whatever outside FDA. Because if it is only lack of the requisite personnel, the veterinary services or whoever is in charge could bring personnel to do the testing. So we don't duplicate the establishment of the laboratory. But if indeed they don't have it, then certainly what the committee is recommending to us is what we should do. Mr. Speaker, so on that note, I would call for the adoption of the report, subject to further clarifying whether or not the FDA has laboratories or personnel to investigate veterinary drugs and biologics. Mr. Speaker, even though as of now, I have no cause to dispute and indeed disbelieve the position of the Committee on Agriculture on this.
Which is a bipartisan.
Very well, honorable members. I'll pull the question now. All in favor of the motion say aye. Aye. All against say no. The ayes have it. The motion is adopted. Item number 9. Honorable Majority Leader, are we ready to go on with item number 9?
Speaker, in the absence of the Minister, I may want to move that the House adopts the resolution captured as item number 9 on the order paper of today, on pages 3 and 4. The Speaker, so move.
Chairman of the committee.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move that this House adopts.
Honourable Member, the motion has been moved, so you only second it.
Mr. Speaker, I second the motion, sir. Thank you.
You will also present your committee's report.
Resolution by the provision of this. Mr. Speaker, I second the resolution.
Honourable members, the motion for the adoption of the resolution has been moved and seconded. As for the consideration of the House, all in favor of the motion say aye. All against say no. The ayes have it. Resolution number number 10 on the order paper is hereby adopted. Honourable Majority Leader. Are we ready to do number 10?
Yes, Mr. Speaker, item number 10.
Very well. Motion number 10. Chairman of the committee.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. That this Honourable House adopt the report of your Committee on Food and Agriculture and Cocoa Affairs on the directives C/DIR 11/10 on ECOWAS veterinary pharmacy on quality control. Mr. Speaker, I'd like to present your committee's report. In doing so, I would like to take the background information, justification, observation, and recommendation. And I'll entreat the Hansard Department to cover the entire report as having been read. The Disease of Animals Act 1961, Act A3, provides for prevention and control spread of infectious and contagious diseases among animals in Ghana. It does not, however, cover veterinary drugs and biologics. It has therefore created a gap in addressing issues regarding management of veterinary drugs and biologics. There are also disparities in veterinary laws implemented by countries in the West Africa sub-region. Having recognized the fundamental importance of inputs that help in the management of veterinary drugs and contribute to agriculture, heads of states and governments of ECOWAS states in 2008 approved a number of regional agricultural directives and regulations designed to facilitate the implementation of ECOWAS agricultural policy, which were adopted in Accra, Ghana, 2005. The general objectives of the regulations are to harmonize existing national regulations for enhanced agricultural production and productivity. They are also to promote regional trade in agricultural inputs and commodities, as well as regional integration, of which agriculture is an important component. Justification. ECOWAS, having realized the risks to human and animal health due to the absence of harmonious laws in the region for the operations of laboratories specifically assigned through the task of quality control, agreed to organize a network to harmonize operations of laboratories. The harmonious laws, if implemented, will maximize the effectiveness of laboratories and minimize the risks to animal and human health in the ECOWAS region. At the 65th Ordinary Session of the Council of Agricultural Ministers of ECOWAS member states held in Abuja, Nigeria on 23 February 2010, it was agreed that ECOWAS member states would operate regulations or harmonization of network of laboratories. Mr. Speaker, with your permission, I'll move to observation and recommendations. It was realized that the Public Health Act 2012 currently provides the Food and Drugs Authority power to vet veterinary drugs, although the authority has no laboratories or personnel to investigate veterinary drugs and biologics. When approval is given to the regulations, the Veterinary Service Directorate of Ministry of Food and Agriculture that has the laboratories and personnel to vet veterinary drugs and biologics will take over the function. The committee recommends that all laws related to veterinary operations should be synchronized to ensure that the Veterinary Service Directorate plays its role as expected. It was again observed that Veterinary Services Directorate that has well-equipped laboratories in Kumasi, Oforidua, Techimai, Takoradi, and Accra that are specially used for the production of vaccines because of the Directorate is not adequately funded to do so. This has resulted in the outbreak of various animal diseases in the country. The committee recommends that the Veterinary Service Directorate should be adequately funded after the adoption of the regulations to ensure that its operations satisfy the requirements of the regulations. The Veterinary Service Directorate is also understaffed. The committee was informed that a request for the employment of 579 veterinary officers was made 6 years ago, but to date, approval has not been granted. With the approval of the regulations, there will be the need to have veterinary officers in all the districts. The committee recommends that approval should be given by the Ministry of Finance for the engagement of veterinary officers to make the implementation of the regulations effective. Conclusions. The approval of Regulation CREG 22/11/10 establishing community procedures for management of veterinary drugs or biologics should ensure that all laws relating to regulations of laboratories and biologics in the sub-region are harmonized to guarantee the safety of our veterinary drugs and biologics. The committee therefore recommends adoption and ratification of the Regulation C/REG 22/11/10 establishing community procedure for management of veterinary drugs or biologics. Mr. Speaker, respectfully submitted.
Yes, Ranking Member. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I rise to second the motion ably moved by the Honorable Chairman of the Committee. Mr. Speaker, in doing so, I'd like to draw your attention to point 3 under paragraph 50, objectives of the directive. One of the objectives is to prescribe and describe the procedures and the rules that member states shall enforce in the areas of control of import and export, movement and marketing, retail and wholesale of veterinary drugs in the ECOWAS region. Mr. Speaker, we know we have challenges with the movement of animals in the region. We can talk about the Fulani herdsmen and herdsmen, nomadic herdsmen, and all the issues happening around. Mr. Speaker, an animal with a disease in another country is likely to move in another country with the same disease. So what this regulation is seeking to do is to have a harmonized regulation to enable us control some of these situations. I believe that if we are able to, if we adopt this and we enforce it, it will help us identify where the animals are coming from, and it will also resolve some of the issues that challenges that we are facing today. Mr. Speaker, we have to ensure that veterinary drugs are of quality. We have to ensure that they are produced from standard laboratories, and we can only do that if we are able to harmonize our regulations, because they can manufacture drugs from Niger, Burkina Faso, and other countries and bring them into this country. And we have to have a way of ensuring that they are of standard and they don't pose any danger to human life. For this reason, Mr. Speaker, I second the motion.
Very well, honorable members. The motion has been moved and seconded for the consideration of the House. I'll put the question. All in favor of the motion say aye. Aye. All against say no. The ayes have it. The motion is carried. Resolution number 11. The follow-up to the motion. Will the leaders defer their discussion until Honorable Leader, motion listed as item number 11, resolution.
Mr. Speaker, I believe if you have put a question on the motion, we can go to the resolution.
Yes, we have put a question on the motion now. We're on the resolution.
Speaker, in that regard, I would move on behalf of the Minister for Food and Agriculture that this House adopts the resolution captured on today's order paper and listed as item number 11, which appears on pages 4 and 5 of the order paper. I so move.
Yes, Chairman of the Committee.
Right Honorable Speaker, I beg to second the motion for the resolution.
Honorable members, the item listed as number 11 has been moved and seconded. All in favor of the resolution say aye. Aye. All against say no. The ayes have it. Resolution numbered 11 on the order paper of today is hereby adopted. Are we ready to deal with the matter that was stood down, item number 5?
Speaker, the committee chair was with us a few moments ago. I believe they are still working on the final product. So if we can stand it down yet, and I think we were supposed to have taken a statement in the morning. If you are minded to have us go through that statement whilst we wait, if they are not ready after we finish, then we can stand it down and do it tomorrow.
Very well. Yes, Honorable Chief Whip.
Well, Mr. Speaker, if we have statement, obviously we can't say we can't go back to take statement. But as to the report, I think it's not ready. The reason why we are saying that is that, Mr. Speaker, we try not to raise this on the floor, but to do it behind the scenes so that we can build consensus. There's been a lot of front and back about it. They are not ready, but we also think that for those of us who have been given the witness statements to go through, for example, my colleague, Honorable Ablakwa, has still not even received his. I'm still going through mine. And our standing orders are very clear. Order 202. If it's given to you, you have up to within 7 days to be able to deal with it. And this was given to us only the day for yesterday. I received mine the day for yesterday after we closed. And it is about 200 229 pages or so.
What has been given to you?
That is the witness statement to check the verbatim report. Obviously, that has effect on what they will put in their report. So I think that maybe if we can give ourselves today so that tomorrow we can lay it. Because if we want to rush to lay it, it may come with all the challenges that we are mentioning. We think that we need to be able to build consensus to be able to have it without having too many rancor. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker.
Very well. I don't know what we're talking about here. The leader said the report is not ready. Somebody is holding a copy, says he has to go through his verbatim evidence. I don't know whether the committee has distributed the report, but as far as I'm concerned here, the report has not been brought before the House because we cannot be speaking to any extraneous matters. What I asked for your comment was that the leader, majority leader, has said that we should take a statement while the committee prepares to present the report. And that's what I wanted you to comment on, if you have any adverse comment on the application.
Okay, Mr. Speaker, in that sense, we have no objection if we have to go back to statement.
Very well. There's a statement that was brought to me rather late. I had gone past statement, so I couldn't admit it. But there's a statement standing in the name of the Honourable Member for Suhum on secret recordings, the need for Parliament to legislate. Honourable Member for Subing, sorry.
Thank you, Right Honourable Speaker. Right Honourable Speaker, I'm profoundly grateful for the opportunity to make this. Right Honourable Speaker,
we want to hear you. So
I'm profoundly grateful for the opportunity to make this statement on the proliferation of secret recording and the need for Parliament to pass the appropriate legislation to deal with it. Mr. Speaker, Article 18, subsection 2 of the 1992 Constitution of the Republic of Ghana provides thus, with the permission I quote, "No person shall be subjected to interference with the privacy of his home, property, correspondence, or communication except in accordance with law, and as may be necessary in a free and democratic society for public safety or the economic well-being of the country, for the protection of the rights or freedoms of others," unquote. This means that our correspondence and communication are protected under the Constitution of Ghana. Even though the right to privacy is not absolute, to legally interfere with a person's correspondence and communication, one must derive one's authority from existing law, which itself is contingent on any of the following conditions. A, that the public safety or the economic well-being of the country is threatened. B, that health or morals are insecure. C, that there is a threat of disorder or crime. Or D, that there is the need to protect the rights of or freedoms of other citizens or residents. The right to privacy is balanced against the public interest test, press freedom, freedom of speech and expression, and the public's right to information, subject to such qualifications and laws as are necessary in a democratic society. With the proliferation of various mobile phones and similar devices, recording of telephone and other conversations has become the order of the day. There are even apps, in quotes, which, when downloaded on phones, allow you to automatically record every phone conversation that a phone is used for. Day in, day out, Mr. Speaker, citizens are being subjected to horrible surprises when they wake up to find their voices on air, that private conversations that they have had with others, believing them to be confidential. Of course, the best way to prevent such surprises is to ensure that A, that you say nothing scandalous or nothing of importance or confidential during any telephone conversation. B, that all meetings at which you are present are held in locations over which you have control in terms of ensuring there are no fixed recording devices. C, that all important meetings that one attends participants must be searched to ensure that that recording devices are not brought inside the meeting grounds. D, that you use WhatsApp for telephone conversations as opposed to the ordinary phone methods, since the experts claim these are more difficult to interfere with, even though we all know how any incoming call or message mutes the conversations. For a while, thus resisting smooth interaction or conversation. Following the above routine is a tall order, Mr. Speaker, for anyone who simply wants to enjoy his or her right of privacy accorded by the Constitution. In most advanced jurisdictions, lawmakers have legislated against private recording, against secret recording, against private recording, against recording private conversations without the consent of the other party or making such conversations public. In the United Kingdom, Mr. Speaker, the rules vary between businesses and individuals. In general, it is not a crime to record a conversation without telling someone. However, it could potentially be considered a breach of their privacy. B, the legal aspect comes into equation if one party shares the recording without the consent of the other party to the call. C, the offended party could bring a civil action for damages if he can prove that his privacy has been breached. D, on the other hand, selling a recording to a third party or releasing it to the public without consent from the other person could be a criminal offense. E, when it comes to businesses, under the Telecommunications Regulations Act 2000, companies can only record calls without telling you if the tape is used for certain legally justified reasons indicated in the legislation. F, secret government phone recording also goes for security reasons, but this only takes place when a legal warrant has been issued for this. G, other regulations like the Regulation of Investigatory Powers Act 2000, RIPA, also regulate the use of recorded phone conversations. In the United States of America, Mr. Speaker, federal law permits recording telephone calls and in-person conversations without the consent of at least one of the parties, with the consent of at least one of the parties. This is called a one-party consent law. Under a one-party consent law, you can record a phone call or conversation so long as you are a party to the conversation. There are, however, various laws against making these conversations public, depending on the state in question. The laws of Ghana do not allow eavesdropping or tapping of telephone conversations by any person or institution. In Ghana, mobile cellular license requires telecommunication operators to ensure the privacy and confidentiality of all their subscribers. Under mobile cellular license, Mr. Speaker, operators are expected to maintain confidentiality and refrain from using or disclosing any confidential, personal, or proprietary information obtained in the course of its business from any user, unless the customer has given his or her consent to such a disclosure. There are currently laws in our country regarding the eligibility of private recordings as evidence in court. However, the usability of such recordings in terms of communicating, say, with third parties or to the public is still a gray area, made even grayer by evolving technology. The Constitution provides that one cannot interfere in a person's communication or correspondence except in extreme situations. These areas of exception are blurred in that it is left to the discretion of the court, i.e., if the victim takes the matter to the court to determine whether his right to privacy may be upheld or whether he loses out because his case falls under an exception. There is a rising incidence of unacceptable sexual or pornographic material finding its way into our social media space, defiling the rights of some of the parties involved. A man records a sexual episode with his partner and decides to use it for blackmail or to disgrace the partner because things are not going his way, most of the time with his face not showing, while the other party's face and private parts are evident for all to see. Some of these matters have led to suicide, Mr. Speaker. Some of these recordings are done without the knowledge of the other party. Those that are done with the party's consent do not include consent to disseminate the videos. This is getting out of hand, Mr. Speaker, especially with the social media boom, which allows for easy penetration of the social space. There are laws against pornography in our country, but how many of these offenders have been arrested and prosecuted by the police? It is time Ghana crafted legislation to make the boundaries clearer. It is time Ghana puts a foot down to some of these disgusting cultures sleeping in and clouding our judgment. In what circumstances, Mr. Speaker, can one record a private conversation and release such conversation to a third party or to the public? In what circumstances can the state breach a person's right to privacy by interfering with his communication or correspondence? As we build upon our democracy and find various ways of defending our rights under the Constitution, it is important that these matters are dealt with and dealt with urgently. Mr. Speaker, once again, I'm grateful for the opportunity.
Honorable member for Honorable Agaga, what's the constituency again? Not, yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for the opportunity. I wish to congratulate the maker of the statement. Mr. Speaker, having said that, I would like to reiterate the point the maker of the statement made to the effect that the right to privacy enshrined in Article 18 of the Constitution is not an absolute right. That is an apt statement to make. Mr. Speaker, the maker of the statement calls for legislation to regulate the interference with the enjoyment of what is otherwise a fundamental right enshrined under the Constitution and is even entrenched. That call may be timely, Mr. Speaker, but it is important to draw the attention of this House to the fact that there are quite a number of legislations which seeks to restrict the enjoyment of the right to privacy and the interference of same. A typical example is the Anti-Terrorism Act 2008, the Narcotics Control and Sanctions Law, the National Communications Authority Act, and Mr. Speaker, quite a number of legislations. The only problem we have with those legislations is that they do not prescribe a sanctions regime for the violation of the right to privacy when it occurs. So that is a lacuna in the law which must be dealt with. Mr. Speaker, we were very conscious about that lacuna in our existing legislations when we attempted, albeit without success, to have the interception of postal packets and telecommunications bill passed into law. That bill clearly provided for a sanctions regime so that offenders of the law, as in those who unlawfully intercept information without the requisite court warrant or order, would be exposed to some penal, if you like, treatment. In fact, there was a provision in that bill which provided for the violators of that particular provision to be imprisoned for 10 years for unlawful interception and disclosure. Unfortunately, Mr. Speaker, the import of that particular proposed legislation was lost on all of us. And so we misconstrued the real import of the legislation and rather thought that what that legislation sought to achieve was to afford the security agencies of state an unfettered right to violate the right to privacy under Article 18. And so in my estimation, the invitation extended to us this morning by the honorable member is very, very, very appropriate. Appropriate in the sense that we need to harmonize our laws on limiting that particular right which is provided for under Article 18. because the exception has clearly been spelled out that in the interest of national security, public morals, and even our health, that particular right could be restricted. But like I said earlier on, the legislations in existence now do not spell out categorically what sanctions regime one could apply to those who violate that particular right. Mr. Speaker, on that note, I'd want to congratulate the maker of the statement once again, and also to invite the current administration, if they consider it appropriate, the bill that was introduced could be reintroduced if they scrutinize it and think that it would pass the test in cabinet. They can reintroduce it, and I'm sure we would give it the support that is most desired. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Honorable Minister for Tourism.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker.
Tourism. Are you the Minister for Tourism? Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for giving me the opportunity to comment on the statement ably made by our colleague from Subin. Mr. Speaker, the statement touches on every member of this society whose privacy, directly or indirectly, may be invaded as a result of the new phenomena called the social media, the apps that are proliferating our new mode of conversation. And Mr. Speaker, I'd really like to urge this House to see this and take it to another level for national dialogue. It is becoming an issue that deserves a better fora outside of Parliament, where the clergy, stakeholders beyond this august House will be brought to bear to deliberate on an issue that in our privacy we can call it the new electronic form of terrorism. Individuals' reputation have been brought to tatters as a result of recordings that were not intended to be shared with the public, and as a result, people have actually lost their lives. The reason why I really want to urge this advocacy is the videos that are being paraded on our social media of individuals' lives, acts performed in private, that for one reason or the other has found its way in the public domain. And we are becoming gradually, Mr. Speaker, numbed to these acts of invasion. And we need to reiterate and give a strong condemnation where we need to draw the line between what is acceptable, what is the norm, and what is palatable to share with the public. Especially for those of us in public life where you have conversations, it could be you as a parliamentarian, a clergy, a family member, you have conversations with a friend, and the next thing you know, it's being played on a national radio, or it's being shared with the entire nation. Not everybody has the courage, the capacity to withstand that kind of shock, and people have lost their lives as a result of this misconstrued sharing of data unintended for the public. Mr. Speaker, in recent times, we were all given this unpleasant episode of a young girl and a school teacher, which brought total disrepute to the education sector. Really bad, but where my concern is the unwarranted sharing of that information, unsolicited sharing of that information, where you turn on your phone and as a result of this social media phenomena, it is staring in your face, and children who are now fond, below 10, using their parents' phone, are subjected to this kind of visual display of things that you would normally not share with your children. Mr. Speaker, as a nation, we need to, and as a body that makes laws, if you look at the Electronic Communications Act, data protection, I'd like for this House to really look at some of these laws. At what point is a conversation that you are sharing with someone becomes private? At what point is a discussion that you have had with someone becomes proprietary? We need to really look at our laws. That does not infringe on freedom of speech, but at the same time does not also create the air of censorship where people are not free to share information. Now, as the speaker alluded, when you're having conversation with people, you are very cautious. You don't even know who is listening, how it's being taken, and it will in some way affect the way we discuss things, where previously you were at liberty to share information with colleagues, friends, family members. We do have a lot of laws, but we need to consolidate, Mr. Speaker. We need to actually have a national dialogue on what is appropriate to be seen and shared with the nation. Is it regular to have two people engage in a consensual activity to be displayed in the national media, on social media? At what point do we call this is invasive and this is not acceptable? If we do not, as a people, as legislators, come to the aid of innocent victims, we will have a situation where we will go back to a culture where people refuse to respond to phone calls for fear of being recorded. And it could be a call that saves a life. Mr. Speaker, the Speaker also alluded to areas in other jurisdictions where they have laws that protect. Where do we stand in terms of invasion of privacy, recordings, and national security? At what point do you call in to give information what you think is appropriate to save the nation where there is an act of terrorism, or where do you draw the line if it is actually a fluke? As a body that makes laws, let us take this serious, because it could happen to you, to me, or to a family member. And these few words are to support the maker of the statement that let's go beyond this august house. Let's sensitize our communities so they do not take it for granted that people who have built lives, reputations, you don't need a second to bring it down in the space of freedom of speech. With these few words, I thank the Speaker and urge my colleagues to take this on, because it could be you. I thank you.
Yes, Honourable Member for South.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for the opportunity to contribute towards this very important statement. Mr. Speaker, my senior and my colleague listed the number of existing legislations concerning this matter. Mr. Speaker, if I may refer you to Section 51 and 52 of our Evidence Act, Act 323. It is these two sections that attempt to protect persons from when they suffer recordings of this nature. What am I saying? Section 51 says it is only relevant evidence that will be admitted. And so if things of this nature are recorded and they become a matter or a subject of litigation in court or prosecution, it can be shut down under 51. Or it can be admitted under 51 if it is relevant. Under 52, 52 says, even though it is relevant, it may not be admitted if it prejudices the case or substantially prejudices the case. But Mr. Speaker, recent reasonings of the Supreme Court in matters of this nature has shifted this jurisprudence. And that even though some of these recordings are tendered in court and are supposed to be shut down under Section 52 of the Evidence Decree, they are actually overridden and admitted. And I make a special reference to the cases involving some of the High Court judges a few years ago. It became a big issue, and the judges who were affected actually attempted to resist the admittance of some of these recordings. But the Supreme Court said no. And they went under 18.2, as cited by my brother in the statement. And Mr. Speaker, I read that again. It says, no person shall be subject to interference with the privacy of his home, property, correspondence, or communication, except, so this is where the Supreme Court dealt with the matter. Then they said, except in accordance with law, and as may be necessary in a free and democratic society for public safety or the economic well-being of the country, for the protection of health or morals, for the prevention of disorder or crime, or for the protection of the rights or freedoms of others. And so the Supreme Court was of the opinion that the recordings that were in question, even though illegally obtained, they were done for the protection or prevention of crime. And so they admitted this evidence and eventually affected these judges. And so I am in full support of this call that yes, there are some of the existing legislations concerning this matter, but there are no sanction or penal regimes covering them when somebody breaches them. So it is important that as a house, we take a holistic view of these matters, because social media has become a very important medium of communication. And often, some of these materials are just dumped in cyberspace, and in minutes, they are found in everywhere in the world. So it is important that we regulate these matters, look at the penal or look at the sanctions that will apply if somebody illegally does this and infringes the law. So, Mr. Speaker, with this word, I'm in full support of the maker of the statement. Thank you very much.
Minister for Zongo.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I rise to support my colleague, member of Subin, for this good statement. Mr. Speaker, communication is so important that it has come to justify the essence of globalization. Mr. Speaker, today you find people far apart, far distance in between, but phone or communication has brought them very close. But unfortunately, humans as we are, we tend to abuse that opportunity. For example, looking at his statement, and I still quote Article 18, subsection 2, that comes to the end to talk about where he stated that for public safety or economic well-being of the country, for the protection of the rights or freedoms of others. Mr. Speaker, sometimes these are subjected to an individual's interpretation. Unfortunately, humans as we are gradually becoming more animistic and sadist in life, because our nature is beginning to change. Some thrive on the sadness, or when others are grieving, that is where they enjoy. Mr. Speaker, but unfortunately, I believe, like the legal brains say, that one has a right to throw his arm to any level. But unfortunately, his right to do so ends exactly where somebody's nose begins. But unfortunately today, people want to use that as part of their economic living, especially hackers, impersonators, and secret recorders. To the extent that modern phones, layman as I am, I got a phone not knowing that wherever you speak to a third party, that phone records the voice of that third party. Now, unfortunately for me, I didn't know somebody saw the phone, took the phone out of me and started pressing, and I started hearing the voices of people. So automatically, certain phones will record But you look at what our legal brains say, especially what happened in the Supreme Court when a case came about. They said the fellow was right for recording. In America, in Canada, in UK, that when two people are talking, one can consent to record the third party. Why? So I can decide to record you only to betray you. So these days, it is even difficult for one to speak on phone. Because you call me and I take the phone, I want to know where you're talking from. 1 minute, so long as you are not my boss or you are not my close friend, I will not extend the conversation. Because I know at the end of the conversation, you record me. Today, as we speak, people have taken an advantage of this. Today, in today's daily guide, in fact, my attention was drawn to a particular picture. And when I went to the picture happened to be a pastor's wife. The face was closed. The breast had some things you can't see well. Now, that fellow who did this might have done it for economic venture, just to betray either the pastor or his wife because she had, posted nude. This kind of nudity, people use it to make money out of it. Some people threaten politicians and other people, even posting the voices of politicians on either Facebook and trying to lure people to deceive them and take their monies. Mr. Speaker, I believe the time has come. The time has come that we must have a serious attempt for attitudinal change in this country. We must change our lives because all has to do with morality and trust. Talking to somebody, you must trust yourself that you are talking to somebody who trusts you, and therefore you must be fair with yourself and not to record him and use it as a point of betrayal. Mr. Speaker, this statement made by our colleague must be taken seriously. We must look into it. As legislators, what can we do to save others? It is not only against politicians, even at workplaces, in churches, as to how people, even in mosque, when you are praying, people want to record you. Why? I'm praying to God and you are recording me. You don't see God. Mr. Speaker, all these things must be taken into consideration. But, Zongos, you do this to a Zongo man, he gets you, he calls for an instant justice. Instant justice, because you record me and you want to use it against me. Whereas I know that what you are doing is not right and I can get you personally, we'll decide it in good faith, not to destroy you. But I think it's time that colleague legislators look into this matter because it's destroying this country seriously. And so I call on my colleagues to look into the case and look into this statement and take it as a matter of agency. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Yes, honorable member for Norton.
Most grateful, Mr. Speaker, for the opportunity to contribute to this statement. Mr. Speaker, I wish to commend the maker of the statement. It's a very, very delicate matter. How do we draw the balance between protecting privacy and also protecting law and order, ensuring that national security is enhanced and supporting national security in fighting terrorism and all the other crimes? Because Article 18.2, which was quoted by the Honourable Member for Subin, is very clear that it's not an absolute right, that the Constitution says that in cases that the economic well-being of the country is at stake, the protection of health or morals, the prevention of disorder or crime or the protection of the rights or freedoms of others, there could be certain exceptions. So clearly it's not an absolute right. And so there is the need for us to balance the concerns that we have. Yes, we all have to ensure that privacy is respected, but we also need to avert our minds to times that some of these methods have proven to be useful to the larger society. And I can cite, for example, in the case of Ghana, the undercover investigations that the venerable investigative journalist Anas Arimeya Anas has been engaged in. Yes, the method he uses, some have concerns, but have the results not been in the larger national interest? I believe that majority of us will say that the outcome of his undercover investigations have largely helped us to fight corruption. It's helped us to fight crime. It has helped us to, as a country, even retrieve resources that can go to develop our nation. And I refer, for example, to the work that he did at the harbors, at the ports, where an undercover operation was able to uncover what some of our citizens who work in that department are engaged in. We also know what Anas did in the judiciary, in the case of the judiciary, which as an undercover reporter, he was able to unravel some corruption taking place in the judiciary. There have been many other reports that undercover journalists have produced, which have helped our society. And we know that it's not new to Ghana, and it's not a development which happens only in Ghana. I follow the BBC Panorama programs regularly, and I noticed that in Britain as well, that's a method that investigative journalists use. So we always need to find the fine balance between protecting privacy and also protecting the general ideals of society. But, Mr. Speaker, the other concern I have is with the social media craze and how often when these footage have been made available, how people share them, even when they know that people's rights are at stake. And there are 3 recent examples. As we speak, there's a report of the pastor's wife who had to even be rescued a couple of days ago. She attempted committing suicide. She was sending a nude video of herself to her husband. She had captioned it, "This is for you when you return." Unfortunately, she sent it to a church WhatsApp group. And surprisingly, church members decided to share it. And now we are told that the pastor's wife is really traumatized. And people continue to share. That is the concern I have. I remember recently the incident of the gang rape involving a minor. It involves a minor. We are told that even the young men involved are all minors, and yet people continue to share against the rights, especially of the victim, the young female. Then there is also the headmaster and the schoolgirl. Surprisingly, people decided to launch into a kitchen stool challenge, and everybody was sharing and all of that. These things do not really help, and we need to educate our constituents that there are consequences for these actions. The laws frown on this, and you can be held liable for sharing and for further broadcasting and publishing such material. I also want to use this opportunity to appeal to the NCA, the National Communication Authority, that they can be more proactive in blocking these videos. They can be more proactive, because we cannot just lament and sermonize and appeal to good conscience of the general public that when you receive it, don't share. There are others in society who get excited by these things and will continue to share them. But we need the NCA. We know that technology exists for them to block it. I know that, this has been done a number of times, especially when victims have approached the relevant authority. So NCA should be more proactive in blocking these materials. And these 3 recent examples I have cited, I'm told that the videos are still in circulation. The headmaster and the schoolgirl, the gang rape, the pastor's wife, the Osofumame, who is threatening to commit suicide and all of that. The NCA should be proactive and should block these videos. But Mr. Speaker, the point has to be made that this whole social media craze, if you don't want to fall victim and you don't want to be crying after the horses have really bolted, shouldn't we be advising our constituents and advising the general public to really stop the production of these things? I mean, why are people so tempted to take videos of themselves naked, of private parts, no matter who you are sending it to? I mean, who tells you that the channel is so secure that once you send it to your loved one, it's only your loved one who has it? I mean, you have no idea where it ends up, the processes that it goes through before it gets to the recipient. So really, we should advise, because sometimes when you hear all the stories, it's about, I sold my phone, or I sent my phone for repairs, and then it got into the wrong hands, or my phone was stolen. So to avoid all of this, why don't we just admonish each other
Remember, all those videos voluntarily made by the people themselves. Sometimes you are happy somewhere, and somebody is recording you. Yesterday we were dancing. Today here it is on Facebook. We didn't invite anybody to record us and to share. So these are some of the challenges. How do we deal with people who record you without your knowledge, or even with your knowledge, but without your consent that is being shared? That's the biggest challenge we have. As for nude pictures and things, we can deal with those who, but mostly even those who recorded themselves, they are not intended to be shared with everybody. So we should focus on, his suggestion is that we should make legislation. I want to hear suggestions. Where should we, is there an existing law we should amend, or we should craft a new one? Should it start from us? Also, we've proposed something to executive. I want to hear ideas.
Very grateful, Mr. Speaker. So, Mr. Speaker, you are right that there is the aspect of people recording you without your permission. And Mr. Speaker, I had talked about that earlier, and said that it's a very delicate balance. How do you situate the national interest, the public good, and that of the right to privacy? And I talked about how, in some instances, it has helped us, especially the work of undercover journalists. But then we must generally agree that it's becoming a phenomenon. You are in a meeting, you are having a chat with somebody, and people have lost their jobs. People have lost their careers. I remember the case of the former Deputy Minister for Communications having a private discussion, and she lost her job, and it's not clear if her political career will ever be resuscitated. So there are serious consequences that people have suffered, families have suffered, because of this whole private recording business. But I just thought that I broaden the discussion to look at even those who have voluntarily taken those videos. They have taken it voluntarily, but it's not meant for the general public's consumption. and it's not meant to be shared to everybody. And there are several instances where some have even been victims, you know, and yet you find out that people just keep sharing it and sharing it. And I believe that the proposal for legislation is in good order, Mr. Speaker. I believe it's worth considering. I believe that when a proposal is made and the bill comes before us, we will consider all of these angles to it. But I believe strongly that we should urge the National Communication Authority to be on the lookout. They should have a desk and have officers in charge where victims can quickly report to, so that they can block these footages from being circulated further. I believe that that's where the damage is often caused, whether it's recorded privately or whether it's done voluntarily or whatever. Once you are not, your intention is not to put this out for everybody's, you know, consumption. I believe that the state should step in and protect you, at least salvage what is left, so that it doesn't get out of control. Mr. Speaker, with these few words, I commend the maker of the statement. I believe that a national debate must be triggered, and we have to find some solution of a sort to this. I thank you very much, Mr. Speaker.
I'll give the last word to the Honorable Minister for Works and Housing.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I do not intend to be too long in my modest contribution to the statement on the floor. I'm particularly elated that my Deputy Minister, Honorable Eugene Boakye Edwi, could delve into this topical issue and bring it to the fore in this House. I have been a victim of secret recordings. Mr. Speaker, what was it about? I was conferring with my client on matters which are supposed to be confidential. Unknown to me, my client brought somebody who professed to be a priest, and I was recorded, and that became the raw material of a radio station. And even they pressed that I should be charged for treason. And thankfully, there was nothing that I said on the tape which warranted that I should be charged with the offense of treason. So I am acutely aware that should we have a scenario in which you are having serious confidential exchanges with somebody, and unknown to you, you'll be recorded. To a reasonable extent, if you knew that you were being recorded, you wouldn't have sometimes divulged some serious matters, but you intended them to be private and confidential. So that is where I believe that this statement is very upset, because you can't be sure whether people have really come to terms with Article 18.2 of the 1992 Constitution. But, Mr. Speaker, I am of the humble view also that when you have broad outlines in the Constitution in the form that has been formulated, it is imperative that we have legislation in which this good House could formulate proper legislation on the back of the constitutional provision, and all the nuances and scenarios that can be captured, we put it together. And then we have a serious offense regime, punishment regime in the legislation, so that traducers of the law will suffer consequences thereof. Because if not, we are not safe. There's nothing which is private, there's nothing which is secret. You can even have somebody who is devious enough to even record cabinet engagements and then put it in the public domain. So that is what is very important, and I'm grateful that it's come to the fore. Mr. Speaker, one worrying factor is that because of technology, romance can commence on these phones. I've been a lawyer and in which there's a man in this country, and by the power of the phone, was having serious romance with ladies in London. And it created a huge and serious matter. So are we now saying that people should not have romance on the phone, or it should be moderated, as it were? That's because these are matters of serious and fundamental for, especially those of us in this house, that if you couldn't contain yourself and you believe that you should have serious romance on your phone, you could be a victim. I am...
Honorable Minister, I don't know, maybe how do you have romance on the phone?
No, Mr. Speaker, it's, I don't know whether I could define it, but anything that by reason of distance you want to excite somebody, you could use the power of this phone, I mean, to secure some immediate enjoyment and pleasures. Yes. So therefore, if distance is now inhibiting what is natural and romantic, this machine has the tendency to help you in some dimension. And some people are very active on that. But my good joy is that in this august house, nobody has been caught trying to indulge in some of these things. And we are so important to the realm and the Republic that we should be careful that none of us will be caught in this. But, Mr. Speaker, my chief concern is this, that how can somebody in his right mind set up a pastor and in this manner? Because I do not understand, maybe, because my reading was that the initiation of the romance came from the woman, and the pastor was afield trying to preach the word of God. So I'm tempted to believe the wife was the one who was challenged, not the pastor. But if this is the scenario, then it's very mean, extremely mean for anybody to have sent it out and became viral on the internet. So, Mr. Speaker, I am very, very supportive of this statement. And today is not X, so we might gloss over it. If you do not take active steps to protect the excesses of and the abuse of these mobile phones, we cannot even talk about the consequences which could affect people who are genuinely, using it for their private enjoyment or pleasures. Because I will not believe that we should use this machine as a medium for pornography. That is a different criminal offense altogether. But if it's a marital situation and somebody believes that that is also something you can interfere and use it for all kinds of mischief, then I would add my voice to what my able Deputy Minister for Works and Housing, Honorable Eugene Boachi-Antwi, the Member of Parliament for Subin, that geographical area where the sacred things of the Tumfo are located, is done so well, and we should initiate it. My chief concern is that we do not have the power to initiate it, but we could influence it. It's always at the behest of the Attorney General in terms of some of these legislations. But we could prompt the Attorney General and all the stakeholders to ensure that we guard against some of these excesses. Mr. Speaker, I'm grateful for this small space of time you've allotted me to make this contribution. I'm grateful to you.
Honorable Deputy Minister, you've been persistent. I'll give you 3 minutes to make your point.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I want to commend the Speaker the maker of the statement and the contributions so far. But Mr. Speaker, all the efforts, as I see, has been an invitation on you to start a process of legislating, but unfortunately, everybody's focus is on the offender rather than the victim. Mr. Speaker, I want to commend all of them for having made these statements. But I want to also direct that in the event that you want to start the process of legislating, let us also look at restitution for the victim of such offense. Mr. Speaker, you will recall that in the case of Republic versus Ebele Dusey, in respect of causing fear and panic, a letter from the then accused person to another person was considered as a private communication, not a publication, under which a victim could have filed a suit for defamation. In the present circumstances, if we have such a situation, the victim cannot go to court to claim for damages, and therefore that victim will be left with nothing at all, although the offender will be punished. Mr. Speaker, in a very recent case, Mrs. Abraham Poguyaka versus Agricultural Development Bank. Mr. Speaker, if you care, I give you the citation. The holding of the court per Justice Duce was that the victim who had been dismissed upon private communication had been restored to her position of employment, but beyond that, she was left with nothing. Albeit that information had been circulated through the trial and beyond, and the publications coming out of the trial. So, Mr. Speaker, what I'm saying is that if we are minded to legislate, let us not legislate in respect of bringing sanctions for the offenders alone, but let us also consider the victim of such publication, be it private or considered as offensive to the interest of the victim. Mr. Speaker, with these few words, I thank you very much.
Honorable Majority Leaders.
Mr. Speaker, let me thank you for the opportunity and also to commend the maker, the Honorable Eugene Boachuenchi, MP for Subim, for bringing this matter to fore. On the privacy of communication, even though his call, I may disagree with him along the line, what Parliament can do and what Parliament should be doing by way of legislation. Mr. Speaker, the mobile phone is not only used today for voice or for SMS. It's a universal tool. Usage of it is to store data, process data, and remit data. With the era of smartphones, we are asking for practically the impossible. Once you have a smartphone, it's embedded in it a camera which is for purpose of taking photographs. Once you have your internet, your phone connected to Wi-Fi, broadband, you are connected and you have access to data, including internet data, and even including spam that you yourself may not be interested in, but you are. Mr. Speaker, I do agree with many earlier speakers that the phone, even today, is an emergency tool and instrument. If you need urgent medical attention, even when crime is being committed, today, our most reliable weapon to alert for safety, for security, if it was the police or fire, is a mobile device and mobile phone. But, Mr. Speaker, my first advice is to the Ghanaian, we should stop and end the reckless and irresponsible use of the mobile phone. That is personal. Legislation can't stop it, and legislation won't stop it, and legislation is not practical. So long as, and Mr. Speaker, I have decided to hold 2 phones in my hands. This is a very good smartphone. I hardly hold this. I use it for purpose of data, particularly when I'm here. But I'm the rural man. I use this encrypted phone. Hello. Miss you. Then I cut the phone. Then I say noted later. Why can't I miss my wife? Can't I miss my child? I do. And to find out their location. So, Mr. Speaker, so long as you are using a smartphone, legislation won't help you, and legislation can't stop it. Indeed, Mr. Speaker, to agree with him, and he is seated with my senior in the law, no right is absolute. And Mr. Speaker, yourself a lawyer. That is why the Constitution, in the very article he has quoted, I hope that I can paraphrase same, it says in 18.2, no person shall be subject to interference with the privacy of his home, property, correspondence, or communication, emphasis, or communication, except in accordance with law and as may be necessary in a free and democratic society for public safety, economic well-being of the country, or for the protection of health, morals. I hope the answer captures the exact code. So your right to speak ends at my right not to listen. Fundamental. You say you have a right to talk, you have a right to speak. I have a right not to listen. Fundamental. But Mr. Speaker, public safety and public morality, and that's why I say I disagree with our colleague. Take, for instance, Office of the Special Prosecutor Act 2017. In particular, go to the section on communication. We've granted that right to intercept, the power to intercept. And Mr. Speaker, again, I hope I have some time. There is a difference between a call intercept and call recording. Call recording is actual, live, where you are with the participant. Interception can be done later on, depending upon whether it is voice or SMS or internet data. They are not the same. Indeed, we now have what we call an industrial espionage. So I agree with him that confidentiality of information and its protection, personal and businesses, must be respected and upheld. Indeed, Mr. Speaker, a Russian friend of mine told me that there is a secret between 3 persons if 2 are dead. So if you allow more than these 2 to have access to your information, and you go about saying that you have a secret, what secret? And Mr. Speaker, again in Ghana, our posture that, oh, Mami Nkasa Bebre, I shouldn't talk much, maybe I'll be recording me, it's exaggerated. It's exaggerated in this country. I've been Minister for Communication for some period, and I'm saying it's exaggerated. The only institution which is allowed to record are the telecos. That is why sometimes when you remit a text message, it is delayed. They have it. So at any time you are not within coverage, they'll drop it as and when you have it. I recall even at my time trying to develop what we call seamless access to it. So that if you're traveling from Obuasi to Bekwai, and it is Airtel or Tigo, which had good signals, and you were a Vodafone or MTN person, you should be able to have access because of the phone as an emergency instrument. Between that period, accident can happen, threats of deaths or deaths can happen, births can happen, you want to use it. So, Mr. Speaker, at the heart, fundamental to what the Honorable Eugene have brought to the fore, is the abuse of the phone by the Ghanaian. Look at the kind of insults that go on social media. I mean, I don't do social media. I do noted, CISMA, see Jelio, and then I end the communication. They say, I'm rural, yes, but safer. There is a Haruna Institute in my constituency which manages my constituency. They do that to satisfy my constituents in terms of knowing what to do and what not to do. But personal to me, apart from email, I don't do any social media. I've heard people exaggerate about Haruna on Facebook or WhatsApp. I have never been. Decisively, Mr. Speaker, because we've had some training somewhere. Every communication you drop, it goes into a headquarters knock in the United States. And therefore, they hold you. So even the pornographic you share, the day the U.S. decides in Pentagon that they want to share any person's personal data, they will. They will. They will. They have it. Is the innovation your intervention? It is theirs. Indeed, Mr. Speaker, I had the privilege to work with Prime Minister Harper of Canada and President Kikwete of Tanzania some time back on children and women's health using ICT devices. There's a publication to it, and we've cautioned. Mr. Speaker, the long and short in Ghana is that you are abusing the mobile devices as smartphones, period. Every day, people are looking to even articulate supremacy and superiority of ideas. That is not its essence. The essence is that, Mr. Speaker, as probably you are looking around here, you couldn't find minority or majority leaders sitting. In your coolness, you send a text, leader, where are you? It goes. It serves a purpose. Or you are entering into a home, you want to alert the owner that I'm arriving, so that he knows that it's not armed robbers who are coming towards his gate. Then you say, I'm 3 minutes away or 5 minutes away. Then he says an alert. Or there's a medical intervention, you want a doctor, then you send it. In Ghana, you are abusing the mobile phone and its usage. That is not what social media was intended to achieve. It is to build social cohesion. And Mr. Speaker, it has undermined many marriages. I've said this on the floor before. Sometimes when you are where you should not be, your wife is looking for you, you want to give an excuse. When I'm going to, I'm coming. And you want to use the mobile device. And Mr. Speaker, I hope I can dilate on this point. The mobile phone have become an instrument to build strong social cohesion, even within families. For instance, if you are away, your wife is wondering where you are at a ceremony, you take a snap picture, let her know that at this material time, this is where I am. For the truth.
That is if you want to tell the truth. Else you can take the picture elsewhere. That's not the truth.
Mr. Speaker, I'm guided. But I'm saying that we should use the mobile phone because it is closer to the truth. That is its essence. It's closer to the truth. And therefore, you have to share this detail. But not every morning who woke up well, who didn't wake up well, who is dying, who is not dying, why? So, Mr. Speaker, my disagreement with him is that, like I've said, in the Special Prosecutor Act, we've already said that they have power to intercept. So, when you say Parliament should legislate, legislate on what? We have already given that power. And indeed, Mr. Speaker, as the Honorable Ranking Member for Interior, the Honorable Agalda said, there were initiatives. And Mr. Speaker, again, let me go to the realm of politics and conclude with Honorable Atachia's romance and share some dangers in that world with honorable colleagues. Mr. Speaker, after 9/11, public safety, national security now supersedes all other factors. And indeed, in the era of terrorism, we can only be strategic. That why is it that when you enter an aeroplane, you are told to switch off your phone? Because it can affect the software or hardware of the movement of the plane. That's why you are asked to switch it off. There is a reason and there is a purpose. That interference can cause an undesirable air accident. And persons sitting far away can use it to undermine the safety of the aeronautical regime that is being used. So, Mr. Speaker, The U.S. after 9/11, Congress passed a certain act. That is what Ghana must be looking at, going forward. And Mr. Speaker, I hope, Eugene, I pray that this your statement provokes it. We should have a common national position on this matter. Common national position. Should we intercept or not? What should we intercept? Crime must be intercepted. And nobody should debate that. Crime, any crime, whether it's financial crime or any other crime. Because, Mr. Speaker, let me give you another graphical example. These days, when crimes are committed, at the scene, even accident, we get people send you phone recording. That is useful. That is productive. We must encourage that. So when you say you want to legislate that people should not record, no. The legislation is self-discipline at avoiding recklessness. And I go to the well, Mr. Speaker, and with the Honorable Atachia, those who want distance sex or romance on phone, they go on smartphones in search for it. Distance, romance. Their joy is far away. They don't want a physical interaction which gives them the joy. They want it far away. Pornography, we know the laws in this country on pornography. We don't respect the laws. Eugene must be asking us to enforce. Indeed, Mr. Speaker, what is even more worrying is child pornography. And Mr. Speaker, I'm amazed at my son's Mandea's excitement in wanting to have access to a phone every morning. If you don't check him, even passwords, as parents are typing in, they are curiously watching and sometimes are able to get on. That must be of concern to every Ghanaian parent. The children's exposure to child pornography. And in Ghana, newspaper headline, you wake up, you see pornographic pictures, National Media Commission is quiet, the National Communications Authority is quiet. They can't be quiet. They must exercise this kind of control. So, Mr. Speaker, there's what we call the flexi spy. They don't need you to know what you are doing. But, Mr. Speaker, what is more dangerous, the Honorable Atachia have said it, but probably more cautious because he's on the floor of Parliament, is the way we manage our romantic and sexual life. Like it or not, political office holders, members of Parliament, ministers, pastors, reverends are targets for blackmail. You are targets for blackmail. And probably for those who don't pay enough to the young girls, the way to get you is to record you naked. Then they have a good bargain. They have a good bargain at blackmail. So we should be wary of all those things. But I do agree with the maker of the statement, except as I have said, we should appreciate the phone as an emergency instrument. We should make a distinction between call intercept and call recording. Once you have a mobile device which is smartphone and is connected to Wi-Fi, internet, and you do voice and data, you cannot avoid many of those things. The mobile phone is now used for processing data, for organizing data, and for receiving data. And Mr. Speaker, the days of voice is gone. The use today is data. That's why everybody is on text. We predicted this like 9-7 years back at the International Telecom Union. But Mr. Speaker, many legislations in Ghana will have to be updated. And Mr. Speaker, again, whilst we discuss this, we should be looking at synchronizing data. The NCA is holding on to data. National Health Insurance is holding on to data. Births and Death Registry is holding on to data. Electoral Commission is holding on to data. Yet, we are found wanting when we need information on certain personalities and what they do. We should work towards a harmonized regime of it. So let me conclude once again by thanking the maker. But like I said, the best way to avoid being scandalized on this is self-discipline. Privacy must be protected and respected. but I'm afraid legislation may not be able to resolve it. We must just ensure cautious use of the mobile phone and stop its continuous abuse in this country. The Speaker, appreciate how much radio and television discussion have been enriched with the use of the smartphone. Those were the objects of social media, but not the everyday abuses. Every day we know it all and others. So, Honorable Eugene, commendable statement, but legislation I don't share because we've gone past that mark. And Mr. Speaker, I repeat that we need to build a national consensus as our own far-reaching proactiveness to fight terrorism and other economic and organized crime in accepting that the security agencies, where necessary, must be allowed to intercept, but cautiously whilst we safeguard this right. Because, Mr. Speaker, some communication when it is shared, Mr. Speaker, you can imagine a text to a girlfriend shared with a wife. I know how many wives weep helplessly when they have access to husbands' mobile phones. We know. And we know how many men panic when their wives move closer to their mobile phones. But at night you are sleeping. You don't know what she's able to do with the phone. That is what I say. It has threatened families, it's threatened social cohesion. And the men and the women, we all need to be guided. Mr. Speaker, I will share a personal experience, but one day, when I have a female back in this chamber, I'll show you how smartly they can get an innocent man into their grips. Just the bag that they hang, they will put it with the camera tilting a particular way. An innocent man, you want to enjoy the romance, you want to enjoy the conversation. The camera is tilted at that particular corner of the bag. The bag could be lying opposite your bed. It could be down your bed, but it's activated up. And as you do, you are recorded. God save us. I thank you, Mr. Speaker. I commend the maker of the statement.
On the note of the experience of the minority leader, I'll invite the majority leader to comment if he so wishes.
Speaker, I thank you very much for the opportunity to also support the statement made by the Honourable Member for Subeng. Speaker, this is a very important statement, and I believe that as he's proposing to us, we can go forward to propose some legislation to deal with this matter. The minority leader is indicating to us that perhaps we have lost it already. Speaker, I believe that we still will be able to deal with this matter in some way. Mr. Speaker, the maker of the statement premised the statement on Article 18.2. And it has been sufficiently extrapolated. I would want to move a bit away from what he has said. The Speaker, I rather want to engage our attention on the provisions of Article 21 of the Constitution, 21, in particular 21.4. The Speaker, 21.4 on general fundamental freedoms require us in such instances to legislate. And I believe if we applied ourselves to it, because we are dealing with laws that are reasonably required for the purposes of safeguarding the people of Ghana. Mr. Speaker, that is what the Honourable Member is urging on us. And to the extent that 21.4 provides, 21.4E provides that nothing in or done under the authority of a law shall be held to be inconsistent with or in contravention of this article to the extent that that law in question makes provision. And E is important, that it is reasonably required for the purpose of safeguarding the people of Ghana. Mr. Speaker, it relates to some other matters, including even against the teaching or propaganda of a doctrine which exhibits or encourages disrespect for the nationhood of Ghana, the national symbols and emblems, or incites hatred against members of the community. As the minority leader was addressing the House too. The Speaker, so it's important that we begin to look at these matters. And that is why I agree that some form of legislation may be required in this. Mr. Speaker, again, I agree with the minority leader when, and indeed the maker of the Speaker, when they indicate to us that what we are experiencing now has the potential of jeopardizing our personal securities, jeopardizing national security. I agree with the minority leader. And that being the case, shall we fold our arms and say to ourselves that we cannot do anything, that we have been overtaken by technology? I don't think so at all. Mr. Speaker, again, I want us to look at the provisions of Article 41. Article 41 of the Constitution is on duties of a citizen. And 41A provides that it shall be the duty of every citizen, A, to promote the prestige and good name of Ghana and respect the symbols of the nation. The Speaker, C, provides to foster national unity and live in harmony with others, live in harmony with individuals. If you go and record somebody the way they have been doing, if you go and snap pictures of individuals the way they have been doing, does it promote harmony in society? Certainly not. The Speaker, I can share the concerns of a lady, a constituent of mine, who was in her bathroom. And somebody went, whilst the lady was taking a bath, applied himself to the opening, the small openings there, apparently was hanging on something, and took a picture of that lady. She saw the person. She could not really identify the person, but she saw somebody, the movement of somebody behind the bath. Shouted, the person escaped, but she had taken her picture, her nude picture. And in 2 days, he had started circulating the picture. Where are we heading to as a nation? And that is why I believe Article 41 on the duties of citizens should concern all of us. Mr. Speaker, D provides that citizens shall respect the rights, freedoms, and legitimate interests of others. What people do is a clear breach of Article 41. Legitimate interests of others and generally refrain from doing acts detrimental to the welfare of other persons. Clearly an obvious breach of Article 41. And we say we should fold our arms as a parliament and not do anything. Mr. Speaker, so there are matters that should concern us. And again, on the wings of what the minority leader said, promoting communality. We should question whether what you do contributes, 41G, contributes to the well-being of the community where that citizen lives. 41G. Mr. Speaker, so there are germane matters provided for in the Constitution that the actions and activities of our citizens are breaching on a daily basis. And that's why I agree with the Honorable Eugene Boakye that it should be the concern of Parliament to apply ourselves to the relevant provisions in the Constitution, and in this case, Mr. Speaker, I believe, Article 21 and formulate the relevant legislation to prevent this. Otherwise, we don't know where this country will be heading to give ourselves the next 5 years. Just 4 days ago, I am not on Facebook. Somebody has created a Facebook account using my name, using my image, and I'm told just 3 days ago that he's soliciting serious money. That I'm told I'm in smoke. and in a hat. And a person has created this and is using, I've just been served with telephone numbers that they are using just yesterday. And I intend to pursue it. Ghanaians engaging in that criminality. Mr. Speaker, so we must be careful as a country. And I thank once again the maker of the statement. I believe he's raised critical issues, and I believe that the time has come for us to seriously judge where we are. And, Mr. Speaker, on this note, decide and determine that we should be able to craft the appropriate legislation for ourselves to promote good neighborliness, to protect and promote the well-being of people.
One moment. Having regards to the state of business, I direct that the House sits outside the regular sitting hours.
Speaker, I know that you have divine interest in the subject matter, and because of that, you omitted to look at the time.
I just wanted to remind you that there's a time limit within which to work.
Mr. Speaker, so just to end on the note that it's important for us, in the interest of national security, of personal security, of promoting communal existence, good neighborliness, that we could apply Article 21 and also look at the provisions contained in Article 41 to fashion out the appropriate legislation to combat this emerging menace. Mr. Speaker, thank you.
Very well, honorable members. Very well discussed statement. I think it's an apt description of the times we live in. We should all be watchful. Honorable Majority Leader, there was one matter outstanding. Are you ready, or we should bring the proceedings to a close?
Mr. Speaker, the matter that we stood on, that is item number 5. Mr. Speaker, the special committee is having some discussions, and I'm told they are meeting to do some reconciliation of the report that was to be laid. A member has raised a couple of issues, and so they've agreed to meet at 4 to harmonize the report and lay it tomorrow. Speaker, after it's laid tomorrow, that report will be debated on Tuesday next week. The Speaker, that is what agreement that leadership has come with the committee. So it will be late tomorrow and Tuesday to be debated. Mr. Speaker, thank you.
Very well. And the circumstance is exactly 2 o'clock. And therefore, I adjourn proceedings. Honourable members, the House is accordingly adjourned until tomorrow, Friday, the 2nd of February at 10 o'clock in the forenoon.